Hey everyone, and welcome to the podcast. Today, we're fortunate to have José Subero from Miro here to talk about how they're creating spaces that adapt over time, specifically through designing exploratory environments instead of prescriptive ones. My name is Rebecca Corliss, and I'm joined by my co-host, Omar Ramirez. Welcome to True Understanding. Jose, really glad to have you here. Excited to jump in to set the stage for our listeners right now. Can you tell us a little bit about the spaces you manage, how many they are, really give us a sense of the scope?
Great. First of all, thanks for having me here. Right now, Miro has 11 offices across the world. We have put a lot of effort in our HQ in Amsterdam, right now where I'm sitting. And we have used this as the testing ground for our workplace concept, which is basically a big experiment. It's a building that was built in the 1920s in the Amsterdam style school. It's like Art Deco. And we have worked really hard to keep all the detailing, everything on touch as much as possible. So we had to work and set up this whole office without taking down a single wall. Not one.
Wow.
Not one. So that's 3,000 square meters, that would be around 30,000 square feet, I believe. We are really proud. It was a massive achievement. So, So then the principle for that was that if we already have the space partition, it's very difficult not to have silos, because the moment you start having too much of the same space type repeated over and over, you create smaller offices. So then this becomes an office that, a bigger office that holds many smaller companies. And since we don't have a lot of legacy and silos about that, we are in a privileged position to still keep going that way, right? So we try to do as many diverse space types as possible to encourage the traffic between the rooms and making sure that people would circulate across throughout the building and to balance that out.
That's smart.
So so that was one of the approaches that we took. Of course, then we get feedback that some of the rooms, the acoustic don't work, that our team has grown. So then we need to make swaps, change the whole typology of a room, move teams from one to the other, the typical things. But since we have the flexibility, that's relatively easy for us to do.
I'm curious, what are some of the real specific experiments, or maybe one of your favorite that you've run? What was the experiment? How did you set it up? And what did you ultimately learn that then drove real impact for the employees using the space?
When it goes to the very specific test that we're doing, in this room that I am right now, we created this room to do customer engagements. And the brief for that was that it needs to fit X amount of people, let's say 12 people, and it needs to be the most flexible thing ever. Why? Because we don't know. we don't know what we want yet, and we don't know what our customers want. So that was basically the brief. And what we created is just a very simple space with modular tables that can be nested together. The tables are with a writable surface, and we wanted to keep that because Miro, it started as a whiteboard, and we still have that connection to the analog part of that. We didn't want to be prescriptive on, no, you should use only the digital even when we meet. There's freedom, and we want to keep that freedom at all levels. So the tables are a whiteboard. We use the digital whiteboards. We bring other video conferencing tools and a number of other devices, and that creates explorative environment. And it has been extremely successful with our customers. Extremely successful, and it's the most simple thing we did, actually.
That's great. And then while you're describing the room, please tell me about the fantastic friend that's sitting behind you over your shoulder. Could you tell those who are listening to the video version of this who that is for everybody? Because it can't go unnoticed. It can't.
That's my, yeah. Well, that's the boss right there. Yeah. So that's that's a poster that from the Miro campaign that was launched in the U.S. about tackling monster problems. So using Miro, tackling monster problems using Miro. So it's a very, very funny video, and it's really well done. So I would advise you to check it out on YouTube.
Yeah. For context, for everyone listening to this and not seeing the video right now, there's a yellow poster with an orange monster on it behind Jose's left shoulder that says problem solver, I think, or problem solved underneath
Problem
it.
solved. Yeah.
Problem solved. Yeah, it is a little menacing. I didn't even realize it when we first started recording this.
Oh, I love it. I think it's fantastic.
It's an experiment. We're going to see how the viewers react. So, Jose, I think when you're talking about these experiments, you obviously come from a architectural background. When you're talking about the education of your teams internally, how do you go about that? How do you go about educating people in a way, especially at a fast scaling startup like Miro? I'm sure there's a lot of people listening to this who will also be at fast scaling startups who don't necessarily have the time to slow down. How do you get your point across or get information to the people who need it to educate them in a timely manner while also still moving forward on the projects you need to deliver on?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Omar. I would tell you my personal approach. What I would do is I just have the conversations and just try to inspire people. Because what I've seen here is that we work with enormous talent all around. And I know that most of the people want to do their best, right? It's a fun company. It's growing incredibly. It's doing a lot of cool stuff. So sometimes you get blockers because people are used to do things in a certain way. So I just make the time to, just to meet the people. And when I'm not in the same country, of course, I try to make the time, even if it's a little bit late for me most of the time, just to talk them through, to talk a lot, actually, to making sure that they understand fully my drive. And it's contagious, I have to say, because then people start saying, oh, I really get it now, moving into furniture as a service. So I've had to talk across the organization to making sure that people understand what that means, because I get sometimes a lot of questions from finance. What is this thing? It keeps recurring here, and why are we not purchasing this and that? And then part of the challenge has been the education on that. Guys, we need to change the mindset, and it has been very, very positive. So I think for organizations that is key, keeping that open mindset that we can do things in a different way.
And so when you think of the space that you've shown off here that you're in right in this moment, obviously it's a huge investment. You talked about how your customers are really happy with it and that it's an ongoing experiment given the level of flexibility. What evidence or even data, if there is any, that are you leveraging in order to continue to have that conviction that the space is doing what it needs to?
So our team is capturing different streams of feedback, right? We are starting in a very simple way, just like with heat maps, understanding, okay, is this working, not working? Then before you get very complex feedback, right? Then we know that if, even sometimes with something that says happy face or sad face, right? Because then if you have a lot of sad faces, it's a red zone. So let's put attention to it. So that would be so that's an idea from one of my colleagues, and it has been functioning really well. Just to start, right? Then there are other ways to have deeper conversations. We're using Slack to get also information through there, Jira tickets. and other ways of like doing workshops with several teams, with teams that we need to serve specifically, with specific needs. I mean, since we have put the principles in place to be flexible enough, it's okay. So we are prepared that if we need to change 2 floors and completely change from workstations or other space types into a completely different typology, we can, because we have put the right principles in place.
I'd be interested to know, Jose, like, what are you like, this is a really big process and a journey you've been on for over a year now with building out Miro 1. What are your like 2 biggest takeaways or lessons learned from this process?
Biggest takeaway is that flexibility is key. If we ever go to another listed building, is that we want to be 300% flexible at all levels. From every piece of, every component that we put in here, we know that we should be very respectful of the architecture, very respectful of the spaces that we are in. So flexibility is one. The second one would be to making sure that we put the right technology layer in place, especially in buildings like this, to do retrofits, and everybody knows that. It's just an enormous challenge. And being a tech company, you want to make sure that your technological layer is visible across the building, is felt. More than visible, that is felt. And right now, since we had to move super fast to get the people in, it was kind of middle of the pandemic, at the end of the pandemic, and then we needed to get the building ready. There are some things that we overlooked. And right now, it just creates much more disruptions to actually come back and address them. So those 2 things, flexibility and making sure that the technology, the core technology layer that will support your teams, it's in place.
Those are great lessons. And I think those listening would likely agree and be really thankful to hear that advice based off of what you've experienced and what you've achieved here. And so, Jose, this has been excellent. I can see how you're able to gain the flexibility that you want to achieve, and how that's so core, and how experimentation really helps support that. So that's great. We've had so much fun with you. We've had fun with the monster in the back too. No, I'm just teasing. This has been wonderful, Jose. So thank you for spending the time with us.
Say
we
hello.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It was really enjoyed the conversation.
Hey there, this is Omar Ramirez, co-host of the True Understanding podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a 5-star review to help us expand our reach and grow our community of workplace leaders. If you'd like to suggest a topic or guest, please drop us a line at trueunderstanding.vergesense.com. The True Understanding podcast is created by VergeSense. Over 130 global companies rely on VergeSense for a true understanding of how their workplaces are used, so they can continuously and confidently optimize spaces to reduce costs and improve employee experiences.